Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Shabhava Giri Bajari Gopi Janabhalava Giri Bajari Gopi Janabhalava Jaya Gopi Janabhalava Giri Bajari Yasodhananda Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Yamuna Tira Vannacha Yamuna Tira Vannacha Yamuna Tira Vannacha Bala
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraya Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu
Yam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati
Uttama Sloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed to practically nil, and thus loving service unto the glorious Lord who is praised with transcendental hymns becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse number 50. Bhakti Anji is distributing these sweets on behalf of the shred ceremony she performed for her dear mother yesterday. Passed away a few years ago. So please accept them and give her mom your blessing. One other announcement before the class to try to provoke some auspiciousness in an unfortunate situation. This is from our dear Mother Mohan Singh. She says, my husband finally called me this morning and I found out why he didn't call last night. Because he got mugged in the park in Salinas, Ecuador, and woke up in the hospital. The thieves got away with his wallet, $800, credit cards, ID, and all the groceries. Fortunately, he's not too badly hurt. But please, devotees, please pray for him. Please, Lord Nrsimhadeva, protect him. Thank you so much, dear devotees and friends. Hare Krishna.
Danger there is that.
Until took place. Yeah, that's where he is now, in Ecuador. I don't know, they went from the Panama Canal to Ecuador, and I guess from there it's a straight line to Hawaii or something, you know. He saw Plod and Stringer there. He saw a picture of him with Plod and Stringer. I guess Plod, that's his home country, so he must have been home, although he's genuinely in India and so many other places throughout the world. I was surprised to see him at home. Alrighty, so...
that's the astrologist, right?
Yeah, that's Plod and Stringer, the astrologer. The astrologer and devotee, or perhaps we should say devotee and astrologer. Alrighty, so it's the last verse of the chapter. Please repeat the Sanskrit. Prayasa Sadhavo Loke Prayasa Sadhavo Loke Prare Dvandvesu Yojitaha Pare Dvandvesu Yojitaha Na Vyatanti Na Rishyanti Na Vyatanti Na Rishyanti Yata Atma Gunashrayaha Yata Atma Gunashrayaha Prayasa Sadhavoloke Pare Dvandvesu Yojitaha Navitanti Narishyanti Yatta Atma Gunasrayaha Prayasa Sarvaloke Pare Dvandvesu Yojitaha Navyatanti Narishyanti Yatta Atma Gunashrayaha Prayasa Sarvaloke Pare Dvandvesu Yojitaha Navyatanti Rishyanti Yatta Atma Guna Srayaha
Prayasa Sadhavoloke
Prayasa Sadhavoloke
Rajandrishu Yojitaha Navyatanti Narishanti Yata Atmaguna Shrayaha
Prayasa Sadhavoloke Paredandveshu Yojitaha Navyathanti Narishyanti Yata Atma Gunashrayaha
Prayasa Sadhavoloke Paradandeshu
Yojitaha
Navyatanti Nasrijanti
Navyathanti Narishyanti
Yata Atma Gunasrayaha
Someone else?
Prayasha Sadhavoloke Paradvandveshu Yojitaha Navyatanti Navrisyanti
Suyojitaha
Navyatanti na hirshyanti.
Navyatanti Narishyanti
Yata atmaguna shayaha.
Yata
Prayasa sarvoloke.
Prayasa sarvoloke. Paremanvesu yojitaha. Navyatanti Narishyanti Yata atmagunashraya. Okay, anyone else? Mother Krishna, did you want to do it?
Prayasha Sadhavoloke Paredandeshu Yojitaha Navyatanti Narishyanti
Yata atmagunashraya.
We have a little bird trying to get in the window.
He does it every
Yeah.
day.
Is it a baby or is it a yellow finch?
Was it yellow?
I
It
think
was a
so.
little yellowish ring.
Little yellow wren.
Okay, word for word. Prayasaha,
Prayashaha
generally.
Generally
Sadhavaha,
Sadhavaha
saints.
Saints.
Loke,
Loke
in this world.
In this world
Parai,
Parai
by others.
by others
Dvandvesu,
Dvandeshu
in duality.
in duality
Yojitaha,
Yojitaha
being engaged.
being engaged
Na,
Na,
never.
Never.
Vyatanti,
Vyatanti
distressed.
Distress.
Na, nor. Rishanti, takes pleasure.
Takes pleasure.
Yataha, because. Atma, self.
So
Aguna ashrayaha,
Agurashrayaha
transcendental.
Transcendental.
The translation, please repeat. Generally, the transcendentalist,
Transcendentalist.
even though engaged by others,
even though engaged by others
and the dualities
in dualities
of the material world
of the material world
are not distressed.
are not distressed,
Nor do they take pleasure,
nor do they take pleasure
in brackets, in worldly things,
in worldly things,
close brackets. For they are transcendentally engaged.
but they are transcendentally engaged.
Let me read that again. Generally, the transcendentalist, even though engaged by others in the dualities of the material world, are not distressed, nor do they take pleasure in worldly things, for they are transcendentally engaged. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
The transcendentalists are the empiric philosophers, mystics, and the devotees of the Lord. Empiric philosophers aim at perceiving the all-pervading, that's the mystics, excuse me. The empiric philosophers aim at the perfection of merging into the being of the Absolute. They aim at the perfection of merging into the being of the Absolute. Mystics aim at perceiving the all-pervading Supersoul. And the devotees of the Lord are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the personality of Godhead. Since Brahman, the all-pervading Absolute, Paramatma, the all-pervading Supersoul, and Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, are different phases of the same transcendence, all these transcendentalists are beyond the three modes of material nature. Material distresses and happinesses are products of the three modes, and therefore the causes of such material distress and happiness have nothing to do with the transcendentalist. I'll repeat that sentence. Material distresses and happinesses are products of the three modes of material nature, and therefore the causes of such material distress and happiness have nothing to do with the transcendentalist. The king was a devotee, and the rishi was a mystic. Therefore, both of them were unattached to the accidental incident created by the supreme will. The playful child was an instrument in fulfilling the Lord's will. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the first canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Maharaj Parikshit Cursed by a Brahmana Boy. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Mukam karoti vachalam pungam lingaya tegirim yakripatam vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Iswaram. By the mercy of the spiritual master, even a lame man can cross mountains, and a dumb man recite poetry. Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Jai Nimai Nitai Ki Jai. So in considering this class, I was thinking that the main point is how a transcendentalist is aloof from what happens in this world. Because whether one is in the illusion of believing this world to be the all in all and to take or accept their body as their self, or whether one is transcendental to it, no one can escape the force that makes us act. Krishna's will is supreme, and we are only actors on the stage. And however the director directs, the actors are forced to carry out the play. The director is so expert that he can cover us with modes of nature that force the Atma, or the self, the soul, to behave in a particular way. For example, a dog cannot act except as a dog. Yet that dog is an Atma that is completely transcendental to that body and possesses a form similar to the personality of Godhead. But in this covered condition, covered by the Lord's Mahamaya, his powerful material energy, those modes of Sattva Gun, Raja Gun, and Tama Gun, force the soul to act in a particular way. In species below human life, it is impossible to act any other way. A human being is very fortunate because he can actually transcend the modes. He can understand what is this world. He can understand what happens at the time of death. And he can understand his self is transcendental to this repetition of this cycle of material existence, which doesn't only, which isn't concluded simply with summer, winter, and spring and fall, but at the time of death, the cycle continues. And so the transcendentalist can become aloof to this cycle of winter, spring, summer, and fall, as well as to the cycle of birth and death. That is the great advantage of being a human being. Otherwise, there's not much difference between a human and other mammals. We may have a big brain, and we may be able to invent all kinds of weapons and medicines and fancy houses and ways to escape the heat and the cold. Different things. We can, ways to communicate around the world. We can do so many things. But after all, we only eat, sleep, mate, and defend, just like the animals. All these inventions just facilitates our life in this world. Until we become a little bit philosophical and start to think beyond it. Prabhupada was making the point that the first transcendentalist who understands that there is an absolute, there is a truth or an all-pervading existence beyond this constantly changing life cycle, begins with a philosopher. A person who can think about life and can think about, such things as, ethics, morals, law, justice, all these philosophical thoughts. The brain of a human can think like that. Not an animal. He doesn't think in a philosophical way. That's not his constitution, his mental constitution. The soul is captured, in another mode, a darker mode of life that prohibits that. They can do wonderful things. A dog can do wonderful things, and so can different birds and other types of creatures, even little insignificant types of germs. They look fantastic under a microscope, and they can do all kinds of fantastic things. They're asexual, they can divide themselves, they can reproduce themselves, they can do all sorts of fancy things. They can kill other types of germs, they can do all kinds of things. All kinds of life goes on, in that, what you have to see through a microscope or understand through the various symptoms that can be perceived. So, still they're covered. They can't, the soul within that construction, that body, is only allowed to think like that particular creature, like that particular body. Can't think philosophically like a human being. Not that humans are the epitome of God's creation. According to Vedic knowledge, there are many creatures greater than human beings that actually run this whole universe, just like human beings run or manage planet Earth. Who can say we don't? Whatever we've done to it, we've done to it. It may not be so good in this age, but, we've taken control of it and have exploited it to the infinite degree. We can push mountains away. We can dry up lakes. We can do whatever we want, practically speaking. We've wiped out other forms of existence. We're even traveling, beyond our atmosphere. In other places in the Bhagavatam it says, in other ages humans become so great that they actually do stuff like in Star Wars. They engage in a celestial warfare. I mean, what else do we do but warfare? That's our passionate nature. We have to control the resources of life. And so, after we do that on Earth, we take it out of the Earth and conquer other planets. And at that time it states that the Buddha appears to bring an end to this inner celestial warfare. Just as Buddha appeared in this world to save the innocent animals from the sacrifices performed by the priest, whether it be Jewish priest or Hindu priest, or whatever kind of priest you got, Malayan priest, whatever. So that Buddha in our day and time, approximately 2,500 years ago, appeared to stop that type of slaughter by religious rituals, which is how they perform things back then. Now in our sort of agnostic society, we don't even do that unless you're buying it from some kosher place, Then they do some ritual before killing the poor creature. But most of them don't even care for that. So the first perception of the Absolute comes through philosophical thought, and then one may become interested in practicing mysticism or yoga practices that are taught in the Vedas and by various yoga sutras, how to control the breathing and ultimately the mind, and gain a perception of the Paramatma, or the all-pervading super self, which exists everywhere, and to act in relationship with that super soul. So the mystics become very powerful in that way and transcend the ordinary modes of material nature and gain various perfections. They can become smaller than the smallest, bigger than the biggest. They can go to any place at will. They can have whatever they want from any place at will. They can control anyone's mind. They have all these fantastic powers that they develop. Still, there is more to the transcendence. They may be on a transcendental platform because they are beyond the common modes of material nature, which controls all creatures. But they have not reached complete perfection in understanding the absolute truth. There remains the personality of Godhead, or the source of the super soul, and the source of the all-pervading absolute, which is defined in the Vedas as the Jyoti, or the light, the Brahman Jyoti, or the light of spirit, the light of Brahman, ultimately the effulgence, the orator of the Supreme Person. Most people in our world, they don't believe that everything can come from a Supreme Person. We think that everything can come from nothing, or we think that everything can come from some insignificant matter, some lifeless matter. But we cannot believe that everything would come from a person. It just bamboozles us. How could it be such a powerful person? It's got to be just, some sort of mythology that everything comes from a person who has, complete control over everything. He must be some sort of sadist, to even allow the suffering that goes on in this world. They don't take any responsibility for causing the suffering themselves. They blame it all on their source. The source who has been kind enough to allow them, their sweet independence, which if we don't have, we either revolt or we get so depressed that we make a horrible slave, So, it's only by the grace of God that, we can exhibit our godly independence, being an insignificant part of Him. But yet, we'll sit here with our big brains and our scientific education, and we'll just belittle the theist who believes that life comes from the Supreme Person, the Supreme God, the Supreme Personality. We'll just belittle, such a person as being ignorant. They can't understand anything beyond their religious scriptures. If they were only scientific, they would see how, life has been generated by evolution. And it's come out of, these holes that we can perceive through our fantastic Hubble telescopes and even the greater ones that the Chinese are now building. We can look out there and we can see these things. And, we know life has come from it. And not only that, but they can really get argumentative, and they can kind of come down a little bit into a philosophical platform, a sort of quasi-religious platform of that has a very profound culture around the world. And in the name of Buddhism, say yes, the Nirvana proves, everything does come from the nothingness, the Nirvana, nothingness. But it doesn't matter what, most of them say, it doesn't matter what happens at the time of death. And so therefore they'll get rid of that Buddhism because, the Buddhists say that, you're tangled up in it until you dismantle it all and go back to the nothingness. But the atheistic scientists say it doesn't matter. At the end, it's gone. It's in it. It's finished. With this one lifetime, somehow it's all finished. Whoever we are, whatever pleasures and perceptions and pains that we have undergone, it's just all finished and we no longer exist. And, consequently, what can you say exists? If at the end of each life, we no longer exist, then in reality, what does exist? It just, not only is it temporary, but it doesn't really exist for any of us once we stop breathing. That's their philosophy. That's their philosophy. And they based it upon their scientific findings, which they allow themselves. They actually allow, that's what makes them scientists, because it can change the next moment if they get enough proof to convince them and their colleagues. They'll convince you about it after that. And then it can change again, because that's what science is. It simply takes whatever evidence, that you feel establishes your premise. But, the theists, we give credit to God's breathing. And by God's breathing, we have the Veda, the most ancient literatures in the world. And, and they describe that life comes from life, which is very scientific because, science also means that what is obviously perceived, you have to give it credibility. That's evidence when you can perceive through your senses. After all, they want to be empiricists. They want to be able to perceive with their senses, and God cannot be perceived with the senses. But life can. We perceive life all the time. Life all the time we see coming from some father and mother, or from some, microbe just dividing itself. We don't never, ever see life coming from nothing. So what is more scientific? Life coming from life or life coming from nothing? Is it scientific to establish a premise based upon something that's never been perceived by anyone? It's only in thought? Or is it more scientific to establish a premise on something everybody sees every day of their life? even through microscopes and telescopes, through microscopes, I don't know what they, through telescopes, they may see some stars dividing and they don't give any credibility of light. They just think those are chunks of matter. They have their own perception of what they see out there. But through the microscope, they know that there's life. And they see that it's dividing and recreating itself. So, we do say that life comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead ultimately. And that's where we get our being from, our self from. We have expanded from Him like everything has expanded from Him. And because He's a person, we're a person. Person meaning that He has all sorts of qualifications. He has all sorts of divine qualities. And we can also possess all those divine qualities. But we can also possess demoniac qualities, because we can come under the influence of these three modes of material nature. And they're not all good, but there are many that are bad. So, but God, He cannot come under their control. Because, after all, He's their source. He can control that Maya. It's just another one of His energies, just like we are one of His energies. So He possesses unlimited and inconceivable energy. Everything has come from Him. So He cannot come under the control of any of His energies. But we, who are just an insignificant energy, we can definitely come under the control of His Mahamaya energy. And the Mahamaya energy is imbued with this Shakti of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in the dark mode, it can be pretty nasty. That's why we see a lot of bad things. Because people come under the control of bad modes of nature. And it's impossible to escape that, unless one becomes fortunate. They meet some other person who, blesses them, so to speak, or infatuates them, or gains their attention, and, they also want to become something like that. They also want to transcend the pains and pleasures of this world. There's so many stories. We just read one in the Bhagavatam where one Mugurari, the hunter, he had a very dark mode, and he enjoyed torturing animals. He was a hunter, but he wouldn't just kill the animal for its skin or meat. He would first of all make it suffer by just shooting it in a bunch of places so that it suffered before it bled to death. He actually delighted in that, and you see that amongst people who have a bad mode of nature. They take pleasure in torturing other creatures. The animal rights people and the humane society. It's even against the law. It's even against the common law of people that do that to innocent creatures, and they arrest people for it. They even had that football player who played for the Atlanta Falcons because he was so much involved in supporting the dog fighting industry. That went on behind the scenes. It was against the law, but still many people engaged in having dog fights, and they found this football player was supporting it, and so he went to jail, I think, for a year. Kind of messed up his career. So
he was a Falcon too.
Yeah. So these bad modes of nature are there. But so Mugurari the hunter was like that. But one saint happened to be in his world and noticed that this was going on and approached him about it. Why are you doing this? He said, well, this is what my father taught me. I like it. Just like if you ask a guy, who smokes. I like it. My dad smoked. Well, my brother smoked. My friends smoke. I'm not the only one who smokes. It's enjoyable. If you ever smoke, then who are you to talk about it? Anything like that. People are like that. So he said, this is what I do. I support my family, but, everybody takes pleasure in their dharma. So, but now they say, all right. But you know what's going to happen as a result of that? He said, look, please just kill the animal. Because the result of that isn't so bad compared to the result you're going to get. What do you mean, result I'm going to get? I mean, yeah, for every action you do, there's going to be a reaction. So at the end of your life, all those half-killed animals are going to come back and get you. And he was able to convince him of that, because, he was a great mystic. He had all kinds of... He could actually help him to have a perception of this. Choice was still his, but he could be much more persuasive than me. So, Magurari the honey, he thought, wow, I got to get out of this. So can you help me? And so, he taught him, and amazingly enough, the Hana, took to yoga practice, took to a bhakti yoga practice, a practice of yoga and devotion, and became a great devotee. And later on, when the sage visited him, he went to pay his respects to him, but he sort of danced going there, and Narada Muni, the sage, asked him, why are you acting like this? And he said, because I don't want to step on the ants. So you have a person who used to take pleasure in half-killing creatures, and now he doesn't want to even step on ants. He became so gentle. So amazing. A human being can actually become gentle. And you see this sometimes even amongst powerful warriors, where they become gentle. I had a friend like that. He was very warrior-like. And actually, we depended on him a lot in the early days because, people were very prejudiced and they wouldn't, they took pleasure in being mean to us because we were different, considered foreign. We were doing something, contradicting, that, they felt was just un-American maybe. And so, people would throw rocks at our buildings or throw beer on us when we were trying to sell books in the French Quarter, even spit at you and call you names. And even many times even start hurting you, hitting you and stuff, So this person, he could, it's one thing to stand up to it and, for the guy to slap you around and run you off, because, you don't have the physique and the ability, the fighting and ability to not only fight them, but even to challenge them, practically speaking. But, this guy did. And so he was always, helping the devotees and taking up for them. But later in life, he became a gentle person by the force of nature, real gentle. Never wanted to get involved in controversy and stuff like that. Became super gentle. That happens all the time. So we can have qualities like Krishna. That's what happens when one starts to concentrate on things beyond this world. Whether it be the supreme absolute, all-pervading existence, or the all-pervading super self, or the personality of God himself. When we fix our minds in meditation on that supreme being, then we start to become like that supreme being. Not in greatness, not in his all-pervasiveness or his tremendous greatness, but in his quality. Prabhupada would give the example of like sun rays, little molecules of sunlight. They're just like the sun. Or a drop of water is just like the ocean. Just put it under your microscope. There's no difference between the little ray of sunshine, the little drop of water, and the vast ocean, and the sun itself. Chemically, they're the same. But there's a great difference in the quantity, That little ray of sunlight's not going to do much without that great sun. But if you take away the great sun, then life is over. So there's a difference in volume but not in quality. So we are like God in quality, but just not in potency. We're just not so potent. We only have so much energy. So much we can do. As a human being, when we get these human bodies made of these molds, along with that comes some sort of ability. You have people who are naturally accountants. They can start doing accounting, from the time they're little. Something like Tejas. At 3 years old, Tejas was already becoming a businessman. Just things from his last life. You can find this all the time with people. There's all kinds of prodigies, So, so people can develop a certain potency in this world. Athletes, musicians, people who are just naturally involved in governance. It's just that they naturally have a natural inclination for these things. They automatically gravitate to it for, in their studies, in their training, in their education. And so human beings, as a human being, the soul can have a certain type of potency based upon the dress we get. But when we transcend this dress, then we also have a certain type of potency which you can say is, like Prabhupada's pointing out here, like a transcendentalist. We're no longer, or we bothered by the distress and happinesses, joys of this world. We don't go berserk, if we don't get our Snicker bar or our case of beer, or, our team doesn't win. Whatever it be, our child doesn't make the chorus, or whatever it be, we don't get bent out of shape over that, nor do we get bent out of shape over disease. And so many, traumatic things that happen in life. I had a great example in my mind, and I just forgot it, And Krishna says he's the source of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So sometimes things fall to the back of the computer. So, but, there are certainly, I'm sure y'all can come up with an example of that. Huh? Yeah, he suffered from a lot of disease. He was he had a really wonderful life as a devotee. He had always worked hard, and then he actually became recognized by all the other devotees, his guru, as being, really, being the, like the father of the Jagannath Ratha parade, and Prabhupada even wanted his picture on all the carts. But, he had a horrible disease and wasn't going to be on the planet much longer. And it, caused him a lot of pain. I know a devotee who lived with him, and he said he was in a lot of pain. He'd have swelling, and it'd be tough for him to get through a day, but he wouldn't let anybody even know that he was suffering, and he would go about his work. So a devotee can become transcendental to these things. I was thinking that the perfect example was the king. The king was in the prime of his life. He was potent. He was something like, Obama. A young guy, already president twice. His life is sort of made in one sense. He doesn't have to worry financially, and at the same time, when he speaks something, a large amount of people listen. So he can have influence. Whatever he, wants to influence or persuade, he's going to have a natural potency, influential stands on things. So the king was like that. He was a young guy, His son was old enough. His son must have been from 16 to 24, somewhere up in that age. But, he was relatively, just young, middle-aged guy. And here his life is taken away. Not abruptly just by an accident, but sort of abruptly by a curse, which we may not contribute much potency to nowadays, but in those days, these types of people, these saintly or Brahminical people, the priests in the temples, they had tremendous potency, and if they cursed someone, those curses would happen. So he was cursed by one of these people, that he would lose his life in 7 days. And yet, he was able to remain transcendental to that. He was able to see everything in relationship to God and see God everywhere, and to see all living entities as God's instrument. And he could think about, what does God want me to do? How am I being used? And it came to him, wants me to go sit on the bank of the Ganges and inquire about life and death. What are people supposed to do when they're going to die real soon? And he took it so seriously, he said, I'm not going to eat. Because if I eat, if you eat, then you're going to feel like maybe sleeping, or you're going to maybe feel like getting up and doing something else. I mean, you may want to eat more. In fact, you may even want everybody there to eat with you. Have a party, Everybody, sit around and have some small talk after that. But he said, no, I'm not even going to eat. I'm going to sit down here and I'm going to seriously inquire about this. And he met a person who was able to enthrall him so much in the discourse that, it took him to new heights in his realization. And he wasn't even bothered when the time came. So, that's how potent these transcendentalists can become, that they're not even bothered by death. He didn't try to retaliate, become vengeful. That kid, his family, they all deserve to die. Who are they to curse me? He must think I'm some sort of weakling, that all I can do is like fight with weapons and stuff, as a powerful Khatri or warrior. I'll show him how powerful my curse is. He doesn't know who my family are. I'm the grandson of Arjuna, one of the greatest people that ever walked the earth. I'll teach him a lesson. I'll show the world that you can't get away with stuff like this. I didn't do anything to deserve this. All right, I can understand being rebuked with some words, punished with some atonement, but death? This is an extremely bad example, and he needs to be taught a lesson. Could have thought like that, but he didn't. He ultimately thought, Krishna, what does Krishna want me to do? And he went to the bank of the Ganges so this book could be spoken. And, as I mentioned yesterday, his book was taken up by God's incarnation in our day and time, who also appeared in a very, very, tumultuous time, where his people were being persecuted by, a Muslim regime who simply denounced their culture and wouldn't allow them to even openly practice it, and unfairly taxed them, and would, just make them do whatever they wanted them to do, either through bravery or force. But, so Lord Chaitanya appeared in those kind of times, in that type of situation, and he took to heart this book and told everyone, you should read it because this is our only shelter. In this day and time, these types of situations in the world, what are we going to do to change things? Just read and chant, hear and chant this book. This book will change things in the world. There's one book, and there's so many books. Why, people are going to get another book and they're going to say, oh, all right, and they're just going to put it on the bookshelf because they're already so burdened with books. From the time we are born, our parents taught ABC, and, they start teaching us to read, and, and then the books come one after the other, until, I don't know, maybe some people for bookworm may like it. But other people get tired of it. They start making little books, with 3 words on a page real big. The 1 Minute Manager. Just 1 minute a day will make you perfect manager in life. All kinds of books, making it simple for people, because people get burned out on all sorts of academic, scholastic books, and all they want to read is storybooks, and then they don't want that to be too big. They wait for the movie to come out. So Lord Chaitanya, he's saying, give this book a try. Just having this book on your bookshelf will bring reward. Just touching this book will bring reward. What to speak if you just read one verse of the book? You may not even believe in it. Oh, golly, more Hindu mythology. That's what most people are going to think, There's only one religion in the world. Don't let the other ones hear you say that, because they think the same thing. The world we live in, So anyhow, it's past 8:30, so I'm going to stop. Any comment or question before I bring it to an end, Mother Krishna?
You were mentioning about sometimes people throw beer at you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My mind was the power of the holy name, and my experience of when I first joined, we'd go out in Harinam every week in New York for groceries, mostly the person who did Harinam. And, the same situation like you're saying, people throwing things at you. But we did have structures in the back security to make sure the Harinam party was okay. And one man, he came up and he was shouting in the top of his lungs. And the louder he would shout, the louder Prabhu would chant. And this was going back and forth and back and forth. So finally, what happened, of course, the man, couldn't take it anymore, and he walked off and continued on.
Yeah, the holy name saved us many times. Occasionally, that we would be taught some other type of lesson. I remember one time in Jackson, I was out in the cold, and there was obviously a Vietnam War veteran on the other side. This is like in the early 70s, And it was really cold that day. And he thought I was a Vietnamese because of the way I was dressed like this, and I'm distributing books, in his mind, that was Oriental, and Oriental for him meant Vietnamese, And so, he kept yelling stuff, and he'd come across the street, and I'd go on the other side. Your family went off,
So I saw someone attack Gary Rush in Boston when I was like 1969, I think. And the same thing. I just came, I fought for that guy, I'm not gooks on this. And he actually was, manhandling Gary Rush. People came to his rescue.
But people could also be so nice. I was so cold that day, I went into a shoe store and sat down. And although I wasn't going to buy any shoes, I even fell asleep in the seat. And people were so kind to me. They never bothered me, And they asked me if I was all right when I got up, and I thanked them and just left. Ranganath, when he would get tired on Sankirtan, he would go into a store and go into the clothing room where you change clothes. He would go to sleep in there, Take a little nap for 15 minutes or something, and then he'd come out.
Wow.
You had a place in the airport too. It was either him or Ananda.
Yeah, no, it was both of them.
Yeah.
They both did it. They said one day they went up there and they decided to take rest. They were so tired. They said it was the one day that Vicodara came to the airport. He would never come. He came to the airport and he found him. And then, he said, "What are you doing?"